Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 23rd, 2024 City Council meeting for the City of Asheville. If you'll all just take a moment and silence your cell phones, if you haven't already. And also, if there's any item on the agenda that you want to sign up to speak under, please step out into the hall if you haven't already, and they will sign you up, and it will populate our sign-up sheet on our computers. So to start things off tonight, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any proclamations this evening, so I'm going to move to the consent agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have a couple questions about bidding process. On our agenda briefing on Thursday, the question was around item B and the two vendors that weren't able to meet our transportation needs. Could we have someone speak a little bit to the capacity building or the barriers in place for us to be able to contract with minority and women-owned businesses?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Roney. Basically, it just boiled down to budget. We had a total of 4 responsive bids, or 4 who submitted bids. 3 were responsive, and the bid was won by the one who was just cheaper rate. So just to compare, the bid that we ultimately ended up going with was 30% cheaper than one, 51% cheaper than the other.
Thank you so much. And so that just brings to mind our concern around the disparity study that we just recently adopted and the conversation I was hearing last night at the Reparations Commission with the draft Stop the Harm audit recommendations. I'm just wondering how we might be able to start working with other organizations and businesses in the area to make sure that we can meet our goals around our disparity study and different outcomes than we're getting right now.
Let me just say, folks, that was D. Tyrell McGirt, our Parks and Rec
Thank
Director,
you.
who did get a major shout out last night at the Reparations Commission for his 800% enhancement of the Parks and Rec Division in terms of its services to our community. So thank you very much for that. So, and then we'll turn over to our city manager to answer this next question.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank you, Dee. And yes, we are aware of, as a result of the disparity study, we got some work to do. We realize that. And part of that work involves having vendors be ready, and I think you heard a lot about that as well, and having an appropriate pipeline and helping them to understand what the process is like and on and on. Yes, we've got work to do.
So then, connecting that to item D, I guess, is the question about, or not item D, I guess things moved around, but the bidding contract with Parker Technology where we are not engaging in our normal process. I got some questions about that from the community too.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Jessica Morris, Interim Director of Transportation. Item D and E are similar in that we are requesting council to waive the bidding process and the outreach process in this instance for 2 parking contracts. One of them is with Parker Technology, and that's the company that provides customer service when you're at a garage, and if you're at a gate and have an issue, you press a button and somebody pops up on the screen to talk with you. We have a contract with them that expired. And similarly, we had a contract with Passport Labs for mobile payment, and that's for if you're trying to pay a meter and you want to do it over your phone, there's a software app that you can use to pay over your phone for your parking meter. So both of those contracts unfortunately expired, and the companies have been gracious enough to continue to provide the service. So what we're asking for is to do a new, very short-term contract extension with those 2 companies, allow us to put together a bid so that we can bid them out in the next couple of months. So unfortunately, it's something that should not have happened. We had some issues tracking our expiration dates on our contracts. And since then, we've worked with procurement and finance to make sure that we have a system in place to alert us many, many months ahead of time when we're going to have a contract expire.
Thank you, Jessica and Dee, for helping to add to my understanding and also on the public record. And I just wonder if in the future we might be able to zoom out a little bit and be like, and the way that we're working towards a disparity study to make sure we can meet our contracting goals might help a little bit more from my understanding.
I do have a question going to your earlier point. I was just curious if we're still utilizing the services of our consultant, Cole Harris, for contracting services.
I'm sorry, can you repeat it again?
I was wondering if we're still utilizing the services of
We
Carl
are.
Harris.
Yes, ma'am.
We are.
Yes.
Okay, so any other questions?
I was just going to say a move to approve the consent
Okay,
agenda.
thank you. And
Second.
do we have a second?
Second.
And let me just confirm, I don't think we have anyone signed up to speak under the consent agenda. We do not. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've approved the consent agenda. Moving on to presentation and reports. I guess what I'm gonna do is, Deborah, should I kick it over to you to kick it over to Stacy Anderson? Or not, just kicking it over to Stacy Anderson to present to us the Realignment Working Group report. Sorry for that, it's under manager's report, but in this case,
It actually is separate. We don't have a manager's report tonight, but I welcome
Sorry.
you to
Yes.
present with regards to discussions that we collectively, staff as well as council, have had about the effectiveness of our boards and commissions. And this is going to be an opportunity for them to give actually your first updated report to the council regarding that initiative. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, council members, and City Manager Deborah Campbell for allowing us the opportunity to present to you this evening. My name is Elise Martyr, and I'm representing the Boards and Commissions Realignment Working Group, a volunteer group tasked with forming recommendations to improve the city's advisory board system. We've been working for quite a while, about a year and a half, and although we're not quite ready to make recommendations, we felt this was an important milestone to share with you and the public as it informs our forthcoming recommendations. Tonight, I have just a few key takeaways to share, although there's a lot more depth to explore. We've prepared a 40-page report, which I've distilled into about 12 minutes. So I really encourage you to read our full report, which is linked to tonight's agenda. But before I get any further, I want to start off with some background. In early 2022, a staff-led proposal recommended realignment of advisory boards with council committees, as well as a reduction in the number of boards from about 20 to 4. There was a great deal of public pushback to this proposal, chiefly the drastic reduction in the number of boards. And after several focus groups and public meetings, a volunteer working group formed with the goal of making recommendations around this restructuring. Just as a note, I'm going to use the term board throughout this presentation to refer to boards, commissions, and committees, specifically volunteer advisory boards. In order to make those recommendations, we wanted to better understand the experience of board members and capture what was being heard anecdotally in a more concrete way. In order to do that, we prepared a survey with a variety of question types covering a range of categories. We sent this survey to over 350 board members serving from 2012 to 2022. And we got 150 responses, which is about a 40% response rate, and as far as surveys go, that is pretty good. The first topic I will share with you this evening regards board members' perceived relationship with staff members and their council liaison. On this slide and subsequent slides, I'm going to share several direct quotes that were gathered through the open-ended portion of our survey. These are just the highlights, and there are a lot more of these in our full report. When board members were asked about their relationship with city staff members, the comments were generally positive regarding those direct staff relationships. One member wrote that staff communication and support is spot on, and I appreciate the good work done by Development Services and Public Works. Regarding director-level staff and council liaisons, members felt they were less involved and that this was an obstacle to effectively communicate with council. A member of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee wrote, the council liaison only attended one session in 3 years. City staff directors seldom attended and could not answer questions. Lower level staff were extremely helpful, knowledgeable, and easy to work with. One comment from a member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee really united these sentiments that strong staff support and an engaged city council liaison were very valuable in assisting members in navigating local government procedures and connecting the dots of their work to policy goals. There was a much different response when asked about their relationship with council. Looking across the survey, the questions with the most negative responses dealt with the impact of the board's recommendations on policy and council decisions. When asked whether they agreed or disagreed with a series of statements, the following 4 statements received the most negative responses. Board has impact on decisions. City council acts on and values the board's advice. The board's advice is reaching city council, and the board has impact on policy. We also found a correlation between positive and negative response to these 4 questions related to impact and an individual's overall positive or negative sentiment through the survey. Just a quick note on our methodology, we measured positive experience by looking at the percentage of questions that received a positive or affirming response as opposed to a negative or disaffirming response. And our full report provides greater detail of our methodology. From those 4 questions, we heard that board members felt their relationships with council are weak, and several comments attributed this to a lack of alignment between a board's mission and goals with council priorities, as well as a need for greater communication. One member of the Urban Forestry Commission wrote that better dialogue is needed between the boards and commissions and city council. A more organized way of presenting important issues and goals is needed. Another said that it would be more helpful for council to provide direction to what policies and areas of outreach and education they would like the board to focus on. A member from the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee said that HIAC's role and purpose are unclear. Its channel to voice recommendations to city council is unclear. HIAC could be a useful and strong voice if the communication channels were better and clearer. And a member from the Greenway Committee said, I don't believe our recommendations ever reach the city council or anyone that makes decisions. So we heard from members that they want greater clarity in their mission and goals. So we looked more closely to see how the members of specific boards responded. And before I go any further, I want to pause for a moment because I'm about to compare 2 boards with high positivity scores to 2 boards with low positivity scores. And I just want to really clearly state for everyone who's here today and anyone who's watching at home that having a low positivity score doesn't mean a board should be eliminated. I'm going to say that again. Having a low positivity score does not mean a board should be eliminated. Instead, we should look to those boards and see where the issues or breakdowns in communication are occurring, and likewise to look towards the higher scoring boards to see what is working. And we did just that. We looked at the responses to 2 specific questions. Does your board have clearly defined goals, and who sets goals for this board? So on the left side, we can see responses from members of 2 boards with high positivity scores. And the members of those boards felt they had clearly defined goals, shown by the dark gray sections of the pie charts. And they also knew who set those goals. Compare that with the members of 2 boards on the right side, which had low positivity scores. And in the cases of these boards, a notable number did not feel their board had clearly defined goals, as shown by the orange sections of the pie chart. And a few were uncertain of who set those goals. If you're interested in drilling down into the data on a board-by-board basis, you can find links to all of these disaggregated reports in our full report. Now I'm going to move into a section highlighting some respondent recommendations. These are not the recommendations of the Realignment Working Group. They are just some suggestions provided by survey respondents, and we will consider them when we draft our recommendations. When asked for recommendations, council action and goals were prominently featured in those comments. And again, we are hearing that clearer direction from council is needed with regard to goals so that there's a better chance the board's recommendations will be acted upon. I'm not going to read all these quotes due to our time constraints, but I do encourage you to read them later. Communication was also a strong theme. Primarily, members called for more frequent two-way communication with council. If you take nothing else from this presentation and our report, please take this. The overarching theme from the comments was a feeling of powerlessness. One member wrote, "Serving on the board was a complete waste of time. Great people completely powerless to make recommendations or changes. We were reported to by staff, but had zero power to make recommendations or change anything. Council never included the board in any decisions made around the rec department and facilities." Another said, "The commission would be more relevant and more useful to the city if it were given some degree of executive function, some power over the direction of funds allocated, and an overall ability to chart its own course. It is literally powerless, and however well-intentioned, has little real efficacy." In some cases, this feeling of powerlessness led some members to end their service early. In the word cloud, you can see some of the reasons people gave for ending their service, and the most prominent reason was because they felt powerless. A member from 2021 wrote that they ended their service early due to ineffectual leadership, board conflict, and a strong belief that their efforts on the board would have no impact. While it is true that these boards are of an advisory nature and can't expect every recommendation to be implemented, you are the ones who appoint people to these boards with the expectation that they will advise you. And generally, they don't feel that their advice is being valued or in some cases even heard. So these again are our key takeaways, which I'm going to come back to in a moment. But first, I want to once again express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to share this work with you this evening. I also want to acknowledge those individuals that are listed on the left, several of whom are in the audience this evening, whose dedication made this work possible. This slide also has some helpful links, which the clerk's office can provide to you if they haven't already. As for next steps, We are currently conducting a staff liaison survey, which will conclude January 31st. We will analyze those results and report on those findings next month, after which we will integrate the findings of the 2 surveys to draft recommendations, and our goal is to return with those recommendations in March or April. We don't have a particular ask this evening in the form of a recommended motion, but we do strongly encourage you to read our full report, to post it publicly on the relevant city web pages, and to remain open to our forthcoming recommendations. As a final note, I feel it's important to recognize that what we've done here has followed quite a unique process without any real precedent. This was a collaboration between a group of volunteer citizens working closely with city staff members, specifically Deputy City Clerk Sarah Gross and Assistant City Manager Ben Woody. And we are so appreciative of their input throughout this process and for their support in getting us this audience with you this evening in this public forum. Our findings address many of the questions that were initially brought forth by council members and the public. And if you attended any of those early meetings, you will recognize this as a complete 180 from where we started. We feel we have been hugely successful, and we look forward to presenting recommendations in the coming months. And with that, I am happy to take your questions. How do I go back a slide? Oh, there we go. Yes, I'm happy to take your questions.
Well, first, thank you so much for this presentation. I very much appreciate it, and I think we've got folks here that helped participate in this. If you all could stand up so we could recognize you for all your work in this months and months long project. Thank you very much. When you talk about a 180, talk to us a little more about, in your mind, what that means.
Initially, in those first public meetings, we had about like 60 people in each of those public meetings, and there was a lot of animosity, a lot of inner struggles between the people who were trying to participate in the effort. And in my opinion, not a whole lot of problem solving coming out of that, a more just like airing of grievances. And so by doing the survey, we were actually able to capture some of those grievances in our data. And those that have been involved in the process all the way along, we have a very dedicated group who were really interested in seeing what the data said as opposed to how everyone was feeling, and using that data to inform our recommendations.
It seems really helpful too. I think a lot of times volunteers seek to participate through these boards. I think people run for office because we want to help solve problems and we want our community to be better. And I feel like what I'm reading here, and I read through this ahead of time, is that you've really crisped up what the problem statement is, right? Because sometimes we jump to solutions and actions, but I might think we're solving one thing, you might think we're solving another thing. And so I think when this started, there was some kind of ideas around what the solutions could look like, but I feel like this group has done a really thorough job of pausing, stepping back, and saying, let's get aligned on what we want to work towards. And I feel like that's a really strong process, and I appreciate it. It takes a lot of time. This is quality research. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you to the folks that are in the room, but also our advisory board members in general. It certainly adds to my understanding and helps me make better decisions when our advisory boards bring their professional and lived experience to advise on our budget plans and policies. I know because I get to see you as liaison to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee that in addition to work and home commitments and personal commitments, you're advising on multimodal and the Neighborhood Advisory Committee and this, and that you're not alone. And so I want to say thank you in general to our advisory board members. I do think that what I'm hearing is that we could do better sending requests for recommendation, that maybe there's a communication clog in the flow in between our advisory boards and our council, and how we have some opportunity to do better in ensuring that information is flowing back and forth. Some examples, the budget recommendation that the Urban Forestry Commission made about starting our urban forestry program, hiring an urban forester, investing in the urban forestry master plan. It took 5 or 6 years, but I don't think we would have gotten to the place we are today of having an urban forester and working on our urban forestry master plan without our urban forestry commission. For policy, we recently took the flag lot recommendation and cottage cluster land use zoning policy changes to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee and heard recommendations. It's informing the decision that is in front of us. And we've heard policy recommendations, planning recommendations, multimodal, looking at multiple hundreds of pages of planning documents for how to make our roads safer. So when we do have good communication flow and that clog isn't there to get in our way, it can be such a tremendous benefit. So thank you for bringing this forward so we know what to do next. Look forward to the recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the public hearings agenda. I was talking slowly, boards and commissions people, because this is like your time to secretly sneak out if you want to. The first item on our public hearing agenda is a public hearing to consider an amendment to the UDO to revise the conditional use permit and special use permit review process. Will Palmquist is here to talk about this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Will Palmquist with Planning and Urban Design. I'll be presenting this UDO text amendment. So a little background about why this amendment is coming forward tonight. This is a city-initiated amendment to the UDO, Chapter 7 of our code. Basically started off from a state law passed in 2019 affecting state statute 160D, which governs how municipalities in North Carolina should and can regulate land in their municipalities. A number of changes were made to the law that affected the city, and since 2020, the city's been, city staff, including planning and legal, have been working to update portions of the city code to bring it further and closer into compliance with this new law that was passed. You can see there are about 4 amendments made in the last few years in relation to that. Also some changes to operating rules and procedures for boards and commissions as well. This proposed change tonight would be the final one needed to bring Chapter 7 of the code, known as the UDO, into compliance with the new 160D law. The proposal affects about 18 different subsections of the UDO and basically affects how conditional use permits are named and how they are reviewed. So the majority of the changes throughout those 18 subsections is basically just a find and replace of conditional use and conditional use permit to special use and special use permit. Also, the proposal includes revising how these now would be referred to as special use permits are reviewed as outlined in section 755, which is in compliance and is recommended as best practice, in that these special use permits would then be reviewed and final decision making would be authorized to the Planning and Zoning Commission, whereas now conditional use permits are reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission and then final action is taken by you all here at City Council. The standards for the approval of these special use permits and the uses for which these permits is required are not changing. A few additional changes are being proposed as well to clean up some sections of the code. One is updating some outdated procedural information regarding the airport district, and the other is to remove the adaptive reuse overlay district, which was proposed but never mapped or used since its creation in 2007. This proposed text amendment was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission at its January 3rd meeting. Staff finds that the proposal is consistent with the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan in that it promotes reasonable growth based on holistic decision-making and brings city ordinances into compliance with state law chapter 160D. Therefore, staff concurs with the Planning and Zoning Commission and recommends approval of the proposed zoning text amendment, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have on that.
I guess I have the same question that I did on Thursday. An example would be really helpful, and then it always gives me a little bit of heartburn that we would move something to a non-elected body for review. So what does the process look like if we decide, whoops, we need to bring that back to council?
If you don't mind, Mr.
Absolutely.
Palmquist, I can probably take that. Thank you for that question, Councilmember Roney. This is important. There are two distinct parts of what's being asked for here, all as part of the 160D upfit of our existing UDO. The first part is mandatory, and that is the pure verbiage change from what used to be called, in some cases, a conditional use permit, some cases, special use permit. It is synchronizing that language. Everything is called a special use permit, but it's merely making sure the label is consistent. Nothing is changing under the law and how that's actually applied. The optional portion, which is being recommended by staff, is the second portion of the recommendation, which is that special use permit applications would be reviewed finally by Planning and Zoning as opposed to City Council. That is something that the new law 160D offers as an option to you. You don't have to do it. In the discussions I've had with other cities, most are following this particular proposal. And the reason is that special use permits do not follow a legislative review process. Currently, council, anytime you view conditional zoning, use a legislative process that has far less rules around it and allows you a great deal more interaction with the developer or the applicant. A quasi-judicial process must be used for a special use permit. That's something that this council has not done in several years. It is something, however, that a couple of our advisory boards do. And Planning and Zoning is one of those that now gets training on how to do quasi-judicial procedures. We have very, very, very few of these come before the city. There are only a few types of land use that are subject to special use permit requirements. A couple of examples would be a group home or I believe like a cell tower infrastructure. And I don't have a long list because there isn't a long list. We simply don't see many of these.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Will. Would the temporary substation for Duke Energy require a special use?
No, it's a
Great
conditional
question.
zoning.
No, no.
Oh, well, no.
Different
I
conflicting
thought you meant
answers.
I thought you meant the Patton Avenue side.
Yeah, the Patton Avenue side, the temporary substation.
The temporary, yeah, it's a conditional zoning.
Yeah, that was brought forward as a conditional zoning, but if it were not, if it were new, it would still be conditional zoning. It would not be one of the special use permit requirements. We have very, very few of these. They're very, very particular land uses. And to apologize to your last portion of the question, council retains the authority to reverse this at any point in the future. This is not a decision you should consider permanent. If council ever wants to regain this authority and take on the quasi-judicial hearing responsibility, it could do that at a later date.
Thank you.
I'm going to play back your presentation when I try to fall asleep at night. It was very
I kept it
soothing.
short so it wouldn't put you to sleep too fast. so.
Long story short, we need to be in compliance.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments? No, okay.
I can make a motion?
Yeah, I was just looking to see if we have anyone signed up to speak under this item, and we do. So let me open the public hearing. We have one person signed up to speak, and that is Nina Tovish. And while Nina's making her way up here, I'll just remind folks that are speaking tonight that you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and the lights on the lectern will let you know where you are. Green means go, orange means you're getting close to the end, and red and the sound means stop.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and staff. I am not a lawyer, so maybe I'm speaking out of the box here. I will admit that I am not truly clear on the difference between conditional use and conditional zoning. However, my general thought is that anything that comes up for special use sounds like something that the council, in its capacity as public representational elected body, ought to be having a say in. especially since it affords the public an opportunity to chime in as well. I'm in favor of transparency and accountability, and I think that you all should embrace it. If something comes up and you want to approve it in public. And if it's contentious, give the public a chance to chime in on it. I understand that our city attorney has said that you can revoke or invoke this privilege at any time. If that's the case, why not keep it on the books, have it available? It seems like a level of authority and control that is in the public interest. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing. Questions, comments, or motion, council? If anybody has the motion up, they can.
I make a motion. I move to recommend approval of the proposed text amendments to Articles, let's see how my Roman numerals are. 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then 11, thank you, y'all. And then 16 and 17 of Chapter 7, that's embarrassing. Development in the City Code of Ordinances, otherwise known as the UDO, and find that the proposed amendments are reasonable in the public interest and consistent with the city's comprehensive plan in that they promote reasonable growth based on holistic decision-making and bring city ordinances into compliance with state law, Chapter 160D.
Sandra, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, council, we got to move items B and C. So can I get a motion to continue item B until February 13th, 2024?
So moved.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, do I have a motion to move item C to February 13th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we don't have any unfinished business. Moving on to new business, we've got Ben Woody to speak very briefly to us about a resolution requesting the North Carolina Department of Transportation to consider reducing the design speed between the intersection of Patton Avenue and the Hillcrest Connector and the intersection of Patton Avenue with Clingman Avenue from the currently planned design speed of 40 miles per hour with a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour, whatever that means, to a design speed of 30 miles per hour and use a posted speed limit of no more than 25 miles per hour. Does that mean like you're not really speeding unless you, whatever?
It means the way that they like design the
Design it.
infrastructure is for one number, but that
The
it's
posted speed
safe.
limit is another,
Mhm.
yes, thank
So
you,
it's
okay.
two numbers for different purposes.
Engineer speak.
Yes.
Well done, Councilwoman Ullman. Thank you, Mayor, members of council, Ben Woody, Assistant City Manager. I'm going to give a little bit of background on this resolution, but also want to recognize that we have two members from our I-26 Aesthetics Committee who are also here, and I know they're going to give a few comments as well. This resolution, it's an opportunity for the city to continue our relationship with DOT on the I-26 connector project. We've spent many years meeting with that agency and working together. I've had a lot of successes with DOT on that project. What I think makes this important is this realignment of I-26, which is a major billion-dollar infrastructure project in our area. It presents the opportunity really for the redesign of Patton Avenue. So for Patton Avenue, from the Bowen Bridges to Clingman Avenue into our downtown, part of this project allows for the redesign of that. That will no longer be an interstate facility, but rather it will become really the western gateway to our downtown area. So it is an important stretch of road. And what this resolution does, it allows, I think the city is asking NCDOT and the future design build firm for the opportunity to work together to really make sure that that new section of Patton Avenue not only reflects what the community wants to see, but also is consistent with the city's previously adopted plans, as well as the Patton Avenue corridor feasibility study that we recently kicked off. And again, that's a corridor study for that section of Patton that was partially funded by our MPO, and of course, is something the city works with the MPO and NCDOT on. So we've got a lot of things that are happening, a lot of previous plans in place for that section of Patton. And I think really what it gets down to, if DOT and the design build firm were to consider reducing the design speed, what that allows for the section of Patton, specifically from the Hillcrest connector to Clingman Avenue, that reduced design speed will allow that section of corridor really to be more compact and more urban in nature and more consistent with what I think we want to see that part of Patton become in the future for the city of Asheville and all the community that comes to visit Asheville, work here and uses that western gateway to our downtown. So I think what this resolution does, the city council is just asking DOT, Federal Highway Administration, to continue to work with the city to try and find a solution that works for the community, but also works for their project and their ability to execute this project. And real quickly, the last thing I'll note is the resolution itself. I want to make note of the I-26 Aesthetics Committee, which was appointed by City Council. They did recommend that City Council adopt this resolution, and our Multimodal Transportation Commission, they too recommend that City Council adopt this resolution. So with that, I'm going to sit down. If you have any other questions, I can come back up, but I know we have two of our Aesthetics Committee members here that are going to provide some information.
Thank you. So this isn't officially part of the presentation, so can I get a motion to adopt the resolution in a second, and then we'll open
This
up?
is Kim, enthusiastic motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm gonna, it looks like we've got a couple people signed up to speak. First is Susan Loftus, who's making her way up here and is a one-woman lobbying person around I-26. Thank you for your service.
And thank you for the pointer. So I'm Susan Loftus. I appreciate greatly the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the reasons for the resolution. This first really rough sketch just shows the building forms. If you look at this top line right here, that's actually Clingman Avenue. And east of that, the building form, we want to extend it all the way toward the bridge. And the lower image shows what we have now, which looks more like a highway. So, oh, I can scroll it. I'll try to scroll it. Oh, that scroller. Okay, thank you. So the reasons are numerous, but I just pulled out a few that are important. Environmental, economic, and of course, safety, above all else, is the most important factor, and it's factor enough for this resolution. There's so much documentation that a driver or a passenger in a vehicle is immensely safer at a lower speed limit, not to mention the bicyclists and the pedestrians. So economically, I'll jump to that. We basically chose the 4B selection that was given, of the options that were given to us so that we could redevelop Patton Avenue and get the highway off the bridges, and so we need to continue to focus on that. This design speed reduction will allow us to do that in a much more efficient way. That area is already impacted. We need to impose more density in that area. And we need to build it right the first time and not have to go back and spend additional money revising it. Also, there's $19.5 million currently in the budget with the $1.3 billion budget. And we need to emphasize this area and prioritize a lot of that budget going to this area, and we cannot do that at the current design speed. And again, expediting means having the landscape and the basic form as close to shovel-ready as possible in order to attract the types of developers that we want to see working with the city in order to implement our vision. And again, this final image is just above is the one that shows more the kind of connectivity that we're looking for. And then the lower one shows what we have now, which is one single connection. So the benefit of this resolution will be to give a basis moving forward with our McAdams design team and the design team chosen, by NCDOT for the best possible outcome. So thank you for your consideration. Thank you to those of you who have jumped in and tried to familiarize yourself with this project that took me a year when I got here. So thank you all, and to the many people who've been working on it for 30 to 40 years. Thank you.
I have a question that didn't maybe get addressed.
Is it for Susan?
Yeah. Thank you for your service on the I-26 Connector Aesthetics Committee. One of the things I didn't really hear addressed, and maybe you could speak to, is that if we design for 40 miles per hour versus 30, we're limiting the way that we can landscape or even plant trees around the project. But if we reduce it to 30, then we have more landscape and tree canopy options. Am I
Yes,
understanding
so
that correct?
basically, if you look at the corner of Klingman and Patton as an example, and visualize that moving back toward the bridges, that's a 12-foot setback with 4-foot setback for trees, a little bit less than 4 foot. And that same building format and streetscape is what the city has envisioned. And currently, at a 40 design speed, it can be anywhere from 18 to 20 just to the street tree, and then significantly more for the building facades. So basically, at that narrower building footprint and the narrower street, the environmental and economic benefits are such that, we're improving our runoff situation. We're also improving our coffers because that extra 10 feet of interior structure can benefit greatly to our tax base.
Right, so I think about especially the neighbors of the Hillcrest neighborhood. We know a lot of times, historically, low-income neighborhoods have been built really close to highways and other environmental impact areas. So this is an opportunity not only to improve health and well-being, quality of life, but also potentially mitigate some of the noise of being close to a busy road.
Yes, totally.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ted Figura?
Well, thank you, members of City Council and Mayor, staff. My name is Ted Figura. I am the chair of the I-26 Aesthetics Committee. And going to be brief, I'm just going to say that the committee has recognized for a long time the importance of reducing the speed limit along Patton Avenue. As Ben and Susan have said, this will greatly increase the opportunities for the design-build contractor that NCDOT is going to select to design Patton Avenue in a way that it allows a more urban streetscape to occur, a more urban built environment, which it would be much more difficult to achieve if the design speed were 40 miles an hour versus 30 because of standards that NCDOT has in place for the 40-mile-an-hour design speed. So this is crucial to allowing a solution to this area that the city wants and has wanted for quite some time. Thank you.
Robert Robinson?
Hi, I'm just a citizen of Asheville that knows a lot about traffic safety. And one of the things that I've learned about traffic safety is that slower speeds are safer for everybody involved on a roadway. It doesn't matter whether you're in a vehicle, whether you're a pedestrian, whether you're a bicyclist, a slower speed is going to be safer for you. So what we want to do is prioritize high speeds in places where high speeds are safe, like the actual I-26 pathway, and then turn everything else into a place that is safe for everyone to inhabit. If we lower the design speed, it will become a safer place. And in doing so, we'll also improve the quality of place. So I'm absolutely in support of that. And yeah, I just feel very strongly that slow, safe streets are the way forward for Asheville, if we want to reduce traffic deaths and want to make better places. So that's all.
Thank you. Council, that is the last person we have signed up to speak under this item, and we do have a motion and a second. And just a question for Ben. Ben, I think you're the primary contact with our DOT regional reps who are working on this project. So if this resolution passes tonight, will you be the one kind of shepherding that communication?
Yes, I will. I will follow up with the district engineer tomorrow. And NCDOT is aware that this is being considered tonight. But yes, I'll make sure that the resolution is sent to the appropriate parties.
Yeah, to add to that, I walked through this resolution with the district engineer last week and talked through kind of the reasoning and the rationale. And he is expecting, I told him I was really excited, we'd see what council thinks, so he won't be surprised.
And shout out to our state senator, Julie Mayfield, also has been in communication with me and others, I think, around this issue. And she has also done a lot of communicating with the NCDOT to help them understand how to best help us as a community.
And just to add, now that you mentioned Julie, I did have the opportunity as the liaison to the Housing Authority to meet with Senator Mayfield and the chair of the Housing Authority, and she was in favor of this as well.
I wanted to say that though it seems like it's really last minute after 30-plus years of talking about the I-26 connector, I really appreciate that this was on our consent agenda, but thank you to the mayor and the city manager's office for moving it off of consent so we could bring more attention to the importance of this. It's very timely. As one of the two council members with Councilmember Ullman that serve on our French Broad River Metropolitan Planning Organization, we advise on the budget plans and policies for the state maintained roads. So my understanding is that after the Depression, the state bailed out the counties by buying up the county roads. So now you have state maintained roads and city roads. And so that's why you'll see like major corridors like Merriman Avenue are a state road, and then you have the branches off into the neighborhoods that are city maintained. We just had a conversation at our last MPO meeting about the safety outcomes of our state maintained roads. And guess what? It's terrible. We have the second, if not first, wavering in the last 10 years, worst outcomes for bike and pedestrian accident ratios per capita in the state. That's not good for the people who live and work here. It's not good for business. It's not good for our visitors. So for me, if we want to get better safety outcomes for all modes of transportation, including people who drive, then we need to not just rely on enforcement, but design our roads for people to move more safely. And so that's why I'm very enthusiastically supporting this tonight.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you. Now, on to the topic of restrooms for Asheville, an important topic, and Jade Dundas is here to talk to us about this. Council, I've heard from some of you ahead of this meeting some overall support for the idea of enhancing and improving restrooms in our downtown, greatly needed, but some concerns about this proposal in particular. So I just want to forecast that we may not be voting on this tonight, but thought it would be very important to see the presentation, ask any questions we have, and possibly bring this back in February, and staff has had a heads up about that. Also, Sage Turner, who I should have said at the beginning of the meeting, is not with us at this meeting. She will be back at our next meeting. And this is an important topic to her as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jade Dundas, Capital Projects Director. To be clear, today we have one staff report presented to council with 2 resolutions. Just in summary, those resolutions are to authorize the city manager to execute a construction contract with B. Allen Construction for the installation of the freestanding restroom in the Rankin, beside the Rankin parking deck. And then the second resolution is to purchase the freestanding restroom, which is in fact the Portland Loo. So I will get into those details as we go through the presentation. Key takeaways for tonight are the downtown restroom project helps to address downtown cleanliness and safety challenges by providing additional downtown restroom access. The project was supported by local businesses and nonprofit agencies and received letters of support from Asheville Downtown Association and Beloved prior to submittal for an ARPA funding application. The ARPA funding was $650,000 with the intention of improving downtown restroom access, approved in spring 2022. The location of the restroom is in close proximity to high-traffic areas. It replaces the portable restrooms that have been in place in this parklet at the corner of College and Rankin since 2020, the beginning of the pandemic. The improvements to the parklet and the durability of the prefabricated restroom unit will create a more secure environment and lessen restroom downtime, which has been a problem for other facilities. And then the addition of this unit does not preclude the reopening of restrooms or the installation of other freestanding restrooms. Just to indicate where the downtown restrooms are available, this map is on the city's website. The restroom that we will be talking, or the location we'll be talking about, is here highlighted in this teal color in the middle. I did want to point out that there are different hours, maybe through the week or seasonally for these restrooms. So if anybody's interested, and certainly can find this information on the website. The only one that we have 24/7 availability for right now is the portable restroom at College and Rankin. A timeline which has got a ton of information in it. I'm going to try to get through this very quickly. Really, everything up to 2020 represents the discussion around access for 24/7 restroom availability. In committing to a trial period for that, some of those, the city's downtown restrooms, we found that there was a great deal of cost associated with vandalism, and then also downtime. When after hours, they seemed to get vandalized, and it took a lot of time to put them back into shape. 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, about that time, the 29 Haywood Street restrooms were closed, and the APD offices in that facility were closed as well. Yet the need increased for availability to sanitation, public sanitation, and so temporary restrooms were installed in 4 different locations, including City Hall, Pritchard Park, Wall Street, and Rankin. As time passed, the locations of Pritchard Park and Wall Street were removed due to outreach from the local businesses and other downtown, the folks that were downtown. Staff, we did maintain the City Hall portable restroom until we opened City Hall back up. And then the Rankin, the restroom in Rankin and College has been in place ever since it was originally put there. Their staff did research on the durability, the options to replace portable toilets, and the freestanding structure that will be presented tonight was one of those options. I did receive positive community feedback on these prefabricated units because their durability, but also the ability to keep them open 24/7 for access. Staff prepared an ARPA application that was presented to council, got letters of support and approved, and then project pre-design began. This was brought to council at the February 14th, 2023 manager's report. We had a couple of slides on this and had a little bit of discussion related to this installation, specifically talking about freestanding units, and then also this Rankin College location. Just immediately after that, we hired a design firm and and got to work in trying to figure out what the design in this park would be to best accommodate this facility. Well, through that process, there's been information sharing and contact with the community downtown in particular. Specific engagements include, like I said, there was a couple of those temporary portable restrooms were not very popular, so there's a petition to have them removed. There was an on-site meeting in March of 2021 about on that Rankin College site to discuss the future of a restroom in that location. In November, that was when we applied for the ARPA funding and got those letters of support. August 2023, we had an in-person meeting at the Collider, and the in-person attendance was not very high. I got the number today, it was about 17 people. We did actually have staff located in the park that were actually directing people to the meeting, so we were trying to boost the attendance as much as possible. We had a survey that was also associated with that effort. We had 225 participants. The responses, varied as they do, but there was positive feedback in there that in support of that location and the structure that we were proposing. December of last year, we presented to Downtown Commission, and then throughout the life of this project, we will continue to be engaging with, engage with property owners downtown and provide notifications of disruptions and schedules related to projects as we do with all projects. All right, the design elements of this, so to be clear, Rankin Avenue is here, College Street is here, the Rankin parking structure is here. This is the parklet in the green here that we would propose to redevelop. The redevelopment would look like this image on the bottom left. Some important elements of this design are new lighting throughout the park. There are cameras for additional security, landscaping the area. We heard feedback about preserving trees. This proposal preserves both of the existing trees, although they will be pruned to provide additional visibility into the site, as well as the tree health. This is the existing site. It's important to know this is an older picture. This is the original location of the portable restroom. And hand washing station. Those units are now on the other side of the park, and so, but there is obviously keeping the condition of these. We do have to pay a contractor to come in and wash these and pump them out. Portable restrooms are always difficult to maintain in a good condition. Also, I was notified that this is an accessible restroom. There are limited spaces on the site that you can actually get to an accessible restroom. This one on the left is actually not, so that's why it was moved up top. The contractor today dropped off an unaccessible restroom, so we're going to have to correct that. The Rankin and College site benefits there are close proximity to the utilities. The freestanding units need a connection to power, water, and sewer. Those are all located on the site right now or in Rankin, which would limit disturbances to College. Close proximity to high traffic areas, Pritchard Park and Haywood Street. They are ADA accessible, and the design would construct this so it would continue to be would be accessible from the sidewalk. The convenience and visibility and the opportunity for improvements to the public space, including aspects of public safety. So that's effectively the redesign and refurbishment of the park. Not located directly in front of business or residential building. Other temporary restrooms, Wall Street and Pritchard Park, resulted in highly negative feedback because of the proximity to businesses and their entrances. And then we've had positive initial feedback from the community members related to these units, and then also the availability that they provide. Design elements of the park and the restrooms specifically they are accessible. They preserve existing trees. I did mention some pruning. Improvements to security of the park in general through lighting and cameras. New landscaping to refresh the park. The actual restroom will be it's spec'd with a baby changing station, hand washing station, and then it will also have sharps containers that will be checked daily and disposed of as needed. And then the safety features are designed to meet SEPTED, and I wrote down what SEPTED means, and
Crime prevention through environmental.
there you go. I tried 2 or 3 times to remember by myself. But. So you have the Portland Loo is the selected. We competitively bid the Portland, the freestanding structure. These are pre-manufactured. They're shipped and they're delivered to the site. We competitively bid. There's at least 2 manufacturers for these units, and Portland Loo is a successful bidder. This does provide year-round operation with the cold weather package, which we have included. 24/7 availability. There's durability in the construction finishes and fixtures. These are designed to withstand a lot of abuse, and so that's allows them to be open around the clock, around all year long. They're low tech with the common parts. There are units out there that self-clean, which require a lot more automation and a lot more moving parts. These things are fairly low tech and have common parts, so they're fairly easy to maintain when that's necessary. The louvers, they look pretty open, but as I understand it, these louvers are built to maintain privacy, provide ventilation, which you don't get a lot of in a portable restroom. And then also observe if there's somebody that has a medical emergency in the unit. This is the inside of the unit. This is pretty stark. It does not contain, I added another picture in here and it probably had more features than what we are gonna get, so elected to go with less, but there will be a baby changing station, a sharps container, trash can in this facility. Okay, cleanliness and security. So the Portland Loo website suggests that the units be cleaned about 2 times per day. Initially, we're going to clean, we propose to clean at 2 times per day. Parks Maintenance has a route that they do on their restrooms now. That includes not only the ones downtown, but also the parks restrooms as well. In those checks, they would check supplies, wipe down surfaces, disinfect, pick up the trash, check sharps containers, dispose of those as needed, and then general maintenance check and performance, be able to write up any deficiencies. The frequency of cleaning will be adjusted according to the needs, and in this scenario, there's a responsive cleaning opportunity. If there was a big mess, then they'd be able to come in and clean that up. This is the same schedule that's used, monitoring the Pack Square restrooms. Park maintenance staff will monitor and be available to clean the restroom 7 days a week during posted hours, of which, again, referencing the map that I showed earlier. The cleaning of this facility may require additional staffing, or resources rather, and those may be in the form of staffing or contracting, but we'll evaluate that over time. Providing additional 24/7 restroom access is anticipated to improve health and safety conditions downtown. Expectations that would reduce biological waste on sidewalks and in properties. Supplemental security, parking services is engaging in a contract. The location of this would be really good, related to being able to have a watchful eye on that around the clock, because essentially it's right outside the stairwell for the Rankin Street garage. So being able to come out, a security company that's monitoring that site and that structure would be able to keep an eye on this as well in their rotations. So back to key takeaways. I'm not going to read these, but I'll leave you with the site design and any questions you may have.
Well, big surprise, I have some questions. On the one hand, I see so many deep needs in our community, and we have high-rated equity and feasibility scored projects from the ARPA COVID-19 relief that still aren't funded, but we still have the need in our community. This is lower on the list. But on the other hand, I've been, over the past year, with all the concerns about downtown, the safety of workers and commuters, especially late at night and on the weekends, I've been doing some personal tours of downtown to better understand, especially when workers are getting off of work and what it looks like to commute through downtown. And I've been surprised at the number of times that I've had to help either a worker or take the initiative to clean up human excrement off the sidewalk. It is very unpleasant. But I don't even have a place at that point to wash my hands because the bathrooms are closed. And so it's presented me with this conflict of maybe I wouldn't have to clean up something off the sidewalk if people had a bathroom where they could use it and I could also wash my hands. So because this is such an important public health investment that we've needed for 5 to 7 years, we've been hearing advocacy for this, I intend to support it, especially with the addresses to safety and maintenance that you've brought up. This is designed for maintenance and high traffic use, unlike our current porta potty in the same location. And you did bring up the ADA compliance, but I think that's so important. We're talking about making our sidewalks and our mobility infrastructure ADA compliant downtown, but the porta potty isn't. And you can take a stroller so a family could use the Portland Loo where the family has some difficulty using a porta potty. So I think this is not just for workers and improving the quality of life for people who live and commute downtown, but it's for our visitors too, folks who are leaving the symphony or a concert and headed back to their hotel. When folks have approached me and say, where do I go for these resources? I would love to be able to answer where a bathroom is that they can use 24/7. So if we choose not to do this, what are our other options? Do we staff at 24/7 late at night an indoor facility? That seems untenable based on what we heard from our timeline. Do we keep the existing porta potty and just keep paying rent because we realize it's a public health issue? How fast does that stack up to being what we're looking at, even though the price tag is high? And just think about like we're leaving people behind that can't use it. Or do we worsen the public health and well-being of our downtown by not having a bathroom? And that's just not an option for me. So that's one of the reasons I support this project. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you.
Council, I don't know if anyone else has any other questions or comments. I agree with all the things Kim said in terms of the identified need and what we're trying to address here. I think one of the challenges for council is that we voted for this list of ARPA items, federally funded COVID emergency relief funded items a long time ago, and it was sort of conceptual at the time. So this is kind of our first chance to see how this is gelled up and be able to take any action on it. The city does have bathrooms in this area that are not being utilized at all on Haywood Street. They're closed, and they're right around the corner. And in fact, if we reopened the walkway through the Rankin Deck to Haywood Street, they would actually not even be around the corner. They would be through a door through that walkway. And I saw that we got a memo with some information just before the meeting saying that staff had some preliminary conversations with the ADA, the Downtown Association, about a concept that they have floated since they, a while back, gave us a letter of support for this. They've now come back and said, hey, what if we were to operate those bathrooms? Our offices are right there on that corridor. Can we explore a way for us to do that? So personally, I would kind of like to see where that discussion lands. The other issue is we have all these bathrooms that were built on Pack Square Park. I believe there are 4 restrooms that our Parks and Rec department manage that are often closed as well. I know Maggie said she checked them this morning at 9 o'clock and they were closed. So, this is a lot of money, and as one of the reasons is because, and people say to me, how come you have to spend $650,000 on a bathroom? Well, it's not just the bathroom, it's because you've got to run all the utility services to the site, water and sewer and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure we have fully looked at our other current facilities that are within a block on either side of this location, and just made sure there isn't a way to open those so that they are available, and what kind of availability could there be? What would it take? You know, our Parks and Rec Department manages restrooms all over the city, and they do a great job at it. And I know the challenges downtown are different and present, they present more challenges. But, you know, the library's operating public restrooms on the corridor running out of the Civic Center deck just down the street. So I feel like we could, I'm not satisfied yet, and maybe staff's already totally looked at this and we just haven't had this discussion and they've already put this to bed and this is the only option. But I would like to know that information before we do this. This is a lot of money. We are looking at other things that we still need to fund. And maybe it's funding for opening these other restrooms more regularly. Maybe it's shelter space, which we know we're going to need to do, and I'm sorry for harping on that, but it's coming, and we're gonna need to have resources available for that.
I'd like to add something to that. Excuse
Oh,
me.
well, let me
Okay.
just, one final thought, and I think if I were arguing against myself, I would say, what about nights and weekends? And so one opportunity that I want to understand is, I have seen in other cities where there's a partnership with the city and the shelter operators to make sure that facilities are provided at night, on nights and weekends, even for those who aren't staying there. So could we have a conversation with the Salvation Army where they're providing services they're already doing, Code Purple for the city, they're already doing shelter bed expansion that we have funded at that site. They are open 24/7. So is there a opportunity there to fill the gap? It's a gap, it's not the same location. I don't know if it's ADA accessible. So there are a bunch of questions, obviously, that we'd need to make sure we understood. I'm just wanting to pause maybe for just till our next meeting or 2 meetings to try to make sure I totally understand the answer to these other questions, because it's a big step. And Jade, no, you're doing a great job with, as usual, bringing forward all the capital projects, whether it's a bathroom or a fire station. All gets us the same treatment.
Yeah, but that's what I was,
Yeah, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
just want to say that but I sort of agree with Mayor Manheimer on this to some degree, because what I'm concerned about, even if you have a 24-hour, loo there, and you wonder about as far as the cleanliness and who will be using it, and, because like Kim said, we want to make sure that not only is it there for, some of the people that we sort of service, that may have those needs. But I think it would be something that we would like to actually use for people in the community, people visiting, a mother with a child or whatever. So for that reason, I was concerned about maintenance, cleanliness, or whatever. And so will it actually address the need that we really have downtown? And I think by actually exploring our restrooms, and ones we have now, and maybe the service and the hours, which makes it more accommodating, we can also maintain the cleanliness, like even with Mayor Manheim was saying, with some of the 24-hour shelters, maintaining some of those areas. To me, that would be a much better service to the community, because we actually have control over the situation. But just to have a bathroom there, that we really still, if we're still not maintaining that 24 hours, is it really doing what we want it to do?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And actually, that was one of the observations at 29 Haywood when we did try 24/7, is that as soon as the facility was unstaffed, then that's when the vandalism and the plumbing would get plugged up and that sort of thing. And so essentially what that turned into was additional downtime the next day. So even if it was as simple as coming in and trying to unplug a toilet, you would still have to have maintenance in there first thing in the morning to start unplugging. And that might be, depending on the severity of the issue, it might be a couple hours, it might be half a day or something like that. So these are built to withstand a little bit more of that. They're easier to clean. I'm not, I wouldn't say that there's anything that can't be plugged up or fouled with, but in this case, they're designed to withstand more of that abuse, quite frankly. So that's, but if in the event that that council was looking for potentially having the existing restrooms open 24/7, I think that that's a situation where we would have to consider full-time attendance, or at least a very robust system of like a rotational security guard or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to me, if you look at the cost of, this, as opposed to, bringing in a service like that, which actually that gives an extra, to me, a sort of an extra layer of security, safety, cleanliness, and, so.
Yeah, and this is a one-time cost. I mean, granted, there would be maintenance costs.
Let's not suggest that this is going to be that much cheaper, and if we used our,
What do you
doing our
mean?
existing, because we would
Yeah,
still
this was said,
have
this
to.
would be a one-time cost, and certainly, again, this would be an unstaffed 24/7 availability. The ongoing costs associated with having some sort of presence would be year over year a substantial cost. We've done, I don't know, there's the after-hours security contract with the Park Index, like I said in my presentation. They'll literally be able to step out the stairwell and look at this just to provide some sort of quick observation in those after hours.
But do you think even if we're sort of working in relationship with some of the 24-hour shelters, because they already have access to,
Definitely something, yeah.
to the staff?
Something we need to pursue. Or
That's the way, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like the theme is we want to kind of crunch the numbers. I know that this conversation came before council before I was at this dais, so, I'm catching up. But I think it definitely gives a sticker shock. And people need to have a safe place to go to the bathroom. That's just human dignity.
Yep.
And so I think what I'm hearing, and I agree with the sentiment of like just doing the comparisons, I definitely have a lens where it can be hard for us to maintain all the things that we build. I think that we work hard on it, but it's tricky. And so growing our portfolio when we have an inoperable bathroom now definitely just makes me say, can we put them side by side right now and show us kind of what the numbers are? And I hear this conversation, Jade and Deborah, on it might be more for capital now if we did this, but more for services later if we invested in the other one. But just seeing some of that sketched out a little bit would help inform my ability to make that decision, because I don't want to, those comparisons. But I do hear a sense of alignment from the group of there's a couple different options to get towards this public health need, and we want to kind of see a little bit more of that comparison, including potentially partnering with some community groups. I think that is worth a little bit more staff time. I know you've already put a lot of time into it, but that type of info I'd really love to see as well.
And I think from the staff perspective, we are not advocating one way or the other. In February of last year, we provided you with some information, and we did not get a stop. We got to continue forward. We have continued forward. If additional information is needed, we'll be more than happy to bring that information back to full council, and we'll review this proposal again.
I do hear some of the things that my colleagues here are saying. I would just like to also consider, if we're talking about a 24-hour facility on Haywood Street, the odds of someone leaving Pack Square and going all the way to Haywood Street seem a little unreasonable. The situation that I most recently dealt with downtown was a mom and 2 kids, and it was Thanksgiving, and we were near the library. So helping her to navigate towards the center was a little bit easier than imagining her getting her kids somewhere much farther. I can't unforget that we have folks commuting and getting off of work and traveling through downtown late at night. So nights and weekends are still really important to me. But imagine we have 3 bathrooms with our huge daytime population and our growing city. I think we need to think beyond just one.
And then one other point, that it was mentioned that the accessibility, I believe this week to Pack Square, again, these are seasonal, so want to direct people to that. The other thing we were told through Parks is that those bathrooms are shut down because of the freezing weather this week. So I don't know how that was notified, but we did follow up, and the cold weather shut
For the
those down.
Pack Square.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
That's
Yeah.
helpful,
So
thank
that's
you.
a public service announcement.
That makes sense.
Okay, so we're gonna revisit this item
Sounds good.
in February, and I'll work with you on putting that on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a housekeeping matter, the person who's holding up their phone, we don't allow signs in the chamber, and also, my eyes are so, I can't even read what's on your screen, so it just looks like a bright light shining at me. I'm sorry. Okay, council. The final item on our agenda is the first moment for us to hear public comment on the fiscal year 2025 budget. And I think first we're going to hear from the city manager, then Taylor Floyd. You guys tell me how you'd like to do that.
Sure. In the interest of time, I'll hold my comments and let Taylor provide you with an overview. This is our opportunity to, and actually an important step in the budget process, to hear from the public. We have a number of ways that people can get engaged, online surveys, but this is where they can appear in person to provide their ideas and suggestions about needs and how they would like for elected officials and staff to consider investing in responding to those needs. So with that, I will turn it over to Taylor Floyd, Budget Manager.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, Taylor Floyd in Finance and Management Services, and really just trying to set the scene for our budget, how we're trying to work through some community engagement in our budget process this year. So as always, community priorities, the priorities and expectations you all set for service delivery are key to our budget development process. We're trying to get that input from our community early and often, including this opportunity tonight in front of you all. And we're also trying to use a variety of methods to engage and hear from the community through our budget process. You all have seen this before, kind of a high-level overview of our budget process. We're kind of wrapping up the internal work. We have a staff retreat actually Thursday, and then we'll kind of shift more into the community, the public, talking with you all, engaging, getting feedback, which will culminate in a proposed budget in May and adoption in June. As always, we have our 3 guiding principles for budget development, ensuring that we have the resources that we need to meet service delivery expectations, enhancing customer value, making sure we're providing services efficiently, and then aligning our resources to achieve community, council, and staff goals. Those goals, of course, include your priorities that you set at your council retreat, or I should say maybe refined at your council retreat last year. You'll have another opportunity to do that again at the council retreat this year in February, these 6 priorities. And kind of a high level, how do we talk about and think about our budget on the operating side, which totals around $240 million. We kind of separate things out by fund. You can see the largest one there being the general fund at a little over $172 million. That's services like community safety, police and fire, parks and recreation, public works, all of our internal services like finance and human resources. The general fund is primarily overwhelmingly funded through property tax and sales taxes. And then the rest of our budget is what we call our enterprise funds, and those are things that we kind of operate like a business. The fees charged for those services go directly into those services, the largest of which is our water resources fund at $44 million. And then we have several other ones that include the Harris Cherokee Center, stormwater, parking, transit, I think I got, street cut.
It's net total's less than the total. What's the net?
We have some interfund transfers.
I'm sorry, okay.
So for example, the general fund supports our transit fund, so it's kind of hard
To
to
tie
make
it,
these numbers
yeah.
match.
Yeah.
But good catch. I'm glad someone's checking our numbers. On the expense side, how we look at kind of where our money is going, it overwhelmingly goes towards salaries, wages, and benefits. That's because we are a service organization. We rely on our employees to deliver those services. You can also see the other items. Operating costs include things like materials or contracted services, and then capital and debt payments are another large cost in our overall budget. Another way that we think and talk about our budget is operating versus capital. Just again, talking about the operating, which for this year's, as I mentioned, $240 million. The capital fluctuates from year to year, but again, in the current year, total $71 million. Really, the reason that we split those things out are a few things. The types of things that are funded for capital, that's projects, big infrastructure projects, buildings, roads, water lines, things like that. Those are primarily funded through debt, primarily bonds, and they're typically multi-year. So we set a budget for those projects, and the staff works through that budget until the project is finished, as opposed to the operating, which you all approve annually. Both of these are critical to service delivery. One thing that we don't mention often is the connection between those two. The capital budget really sort of informs the long-term operating budget in that those that debt that we issue, those loans that we take out, we have to pay back, so that principal and interest are paid through the operating budget in subsequent years.
But I mean, technically, it's funded with taxes and fees. I mean, the debt service
Correct.
payment is.
Correct. So shifting over to the budget engagement and communication, our goals with that are to try to reach as many folks in our community as we can. We're trying to make sure that we're providing meaningful information about the services that the city delivers and also how we resource those services through the budget. And then we're looking for feedback from residents to help inform the budget development as we're working through the process. This year, especially looking for feedback on our capital improvement plan as we work towards general obligation bond referenda in November of 2024. Some of the tools that we use, again, we've used most of these in the past and either have already or are planning to use them for the current year. And again, I'll note that includes tonight's public comment opportunity. So to summarize, community and council priorities and expectations are key to our budget development process. Most of the services that we provide are funded through property and sales taxes. Employees are our most valuable asset, and our capital investments are on a longer time horizon and primarily impact future budgets. And with that, I'll just mention again, as the city manager mentioned, we do have our budget survey open now. It asks residents to prioritize investments and services. It's available in multiple languages, and we have it open for a month. You can click on the link if you have access to this presentation through our website, or use the QR code, and we'll have that available in as many places as we can put it. And that is all I have, unless you all have any questions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take public comment on this item, and then, of course, this is not going to be the last opportunity, as you've heard, to make public comment on the budget. The first person signed up to speak under this item is Paul Howell. Oh, did he? And he may have, okay. Jonathan Wainscott?
All right, my name is Jonathan Wainscott, and I'm just going to riff a little bit on the importance that the city has put in our climate resiliency efforts, I guess. This was from WLOS this week, and our electric buses that we purchased a couple years ago, which I know included some federal grant money, but I don't really care. They are costing us about $1 million a piece, and we bought 5 of them, which brings us to approximately $5 million that we spent on these 5 buses. Now I want to show you what exactly $5 million could have bought us back in 2018. A Toyota Prius, not even a base model, $25,000. So with $1 million, we could have bought 40 Toyota Prii for the cost of 1 Proterra electric bus. By the way, Proterra electric buses is out of business. They declared bankruptcy, so we can't even fix our broken buses. A more appropriately named vehicle that we could have purchased is the Ford Transit 350, fully tricked out. They're not even $50,000 a piece. And so for another $1 million, we could have added 20 Ford Transit 350s, and that's what that looks like. And of course, we want to have a well-rounded, inclusive transit system too. And so we could have also bought 8 Porsche 911S's, vroom, vroom, vroom. That would have been so much fun, but we didn't do that either. And some other vehicles that I know are near and dear to my heart, and many people here in Asheville too, would be our tree canopy litter vacuum vehicles, also known as leaf-sucking trucks, and we could have bought at least 5 of those, probably 8, according to Jimmy. All right, and then to round it all out, with our last of $1 million out of the 5, we could have bought a whole Satan's worth, 666 $1,500 electric bikes for all of that $5 million. And I know that that sounds absurd, but this is what this all looks like. That's on the left, that's absurdity, and on the right is reality. And so now we have reality, which is more absurd than the actual absurd. This is what we've done. So I just would like to ask you all, as we approach the budget, to please choose practicality over popularity and think about the things that we really need in this city versus things that just kind of sound good and make the voters happy, because sometimes it doesn't make me very happy, and then I have to come here and do all of this. So anyway, thank you all very much, and I appreciate all that you do every time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Howell, please. I don't know how you can follow that act, but.
Council, city manager, city attorney, Jerry out in the hall, thank you for signing everybody up. And the gorilla glue that holds everything together, Maggie, good evening. My reflections on the budget for fiscal year 2024-25 is that there are a lot of nice ideas and proposals. Yet my concern is, where is the funding going to come from when we're already $5 million in the red from yet one more poor business decision of dealing with yet another entity filing for bankruptcy? When your constituents said no to these business deals of electric buses and Shangri-La, there was a majority in both cases voting to proceed forward because y'all were doing what was progressive and it looked good to the transplants. Yet again, lifelong residents lost out, and we all know that progressiveness is not inclusive of the Black community. A spot here and there is not inclusive of all. Here we go, election time. And once again, the concerns and needs of the Black residents in this community are addressed on paper. Yet when it comes time to action, the papers get shuffled to the bottom or disappear altogether. We're not in Motown, and y'all not the Four Tops. And we're tired of hearing the same old song. Y'all had the audacity to place reparations in this budget, really. In order to do that, you must first admit all the wrongs done to the Black community, past and present, that impeded and disrupted their quality of life in Asheville, North Carolina, based on racist, prejudiced policies and beliefs established by former slave owners of Buncombe County, judges, legislators, governor, aldermen, city council members. There's no repairing anything until admitting everything. Then that process can start. I'd like to ask y'all to keep our brother and sister Phil Cooper and his wife Renee Cooper in prayer as they lost their little daughter today. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Okay, so let me just double check. I don't think we have anyone else signed up to speak under this item. Except Maggie, you're in there, but you don't have anyone else signed up to speak under this item. So we are going to begin the general public comment for tonight. We have a lot of people signed up, a lot more than normal, we have 32 folks. So let me say this. First of all, for those of you that were doing your hands, that's good work because we don't allow clapping or snapping during this, and you're going to feel like you want to do that. So just give us some hand signals, and this is if you don't, if you don't like it. So in order to get you all in, we do have a closed session tonight as well, council, after the meeting. I think what I want to do is give everyone 2 minutes so we can squeeze everyone in rather than limit it to an hour, because then we're not going to hear from everyone. Other than Mr. Bell, you've got some folks ceding their time to you, so you'll get your 10 minutes. That was your plan, I'm assuming. So with that, we shall begin. So everybody likes it? Show me your hands. You like it or you don't like it? Thank you. So, and we're starting with Jean Bell, so everyone already has to be, we like it. Okay, so Jean Bell, please step forward. You will have 10 minutes to speak. Crystal
There's another person before.
Oh, they moved it. I'm sorry.
It's just the
I'm
page
sorry. There is somebody, it went on to the other page. We've got someone before you. I am very sorry. Thank you, guys. The first person signed up to speak is Claire Clark.
For the last 108 days, the apartheid settler colony state of Israel has been carrying out a genocide of the Palestinian people in front of the horrified eyes of the world. The Israeli state has perpetrated this genocide with the full and unqualified support of Joe Biden and the government of the United States. Over the course of those 108 days, more than 30,000 Palestinian men, women, and children have been ruthlessly and indiscriminately slaughtered by the Zionist occupiers with U.S.-supplied weapons. On December 12th, Asheville community members, your constituents, brought a draft proposal before this body calling on this council to pass a resolution in favor of an immediate unconditional ceasefire and an end to the siege of Gaza. At that time, the genocide had claimed the lives of some 20,000 Palestinian people. In the 42 days since, a further 10,000 innocent Palestinians have been killed by Israeli murderers with American bombs. And over those 42 days, this council has wrapped itself in shame and silence. In that silence, you have become co-signers to an ongoing genocide. So we are here yet again to demand that this council end its silence and complicity by taking up and passing the ceasefire resolution already introduced by your constituents. Y'all need to get on the right side of history. The people are watching. We are waiting, and we will hold you to account. Thank you.
Okay, now we're ready for Mr. Bell. And Crystal McKinnon, raise your hand. You're ceding your time. Patricia Bell and Kadada Wynn. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm here to do two things. One is to update you on peak and to recognize the people that are here who were saying that's affiliated with peak and or the after-school program. So I'm Gene Bell, and I've spent 32 years here, and about 29 of those about the injustice of black kids. And what I want to do tonight is just give you a brief overview of what's going on, the positive and the negative. But it's important to note that I was on the Asheville City School Board for 8 years. I was also a part of 2 schools, the middle school and Isaac Dixon. Worked very, very hard to have those 2 schools updated so our kids would get a nice facility to be educated in. So I have to tell you that and talk about the after-school program that we have at the Eddington Center that's culminated with what we're doing at Peak. Our kids have to have a place to go. The atrocities that a lot of black kids suffer by not having babysitters, not having after school, can't pay for after school, all of that just exacerbates the frustration that they have during the day when they're trying to be educated. So I'll talk a little bit about Asheville, and we're still #1 in the state for achievement gap. And we're like 9th in the United States for our achievement gap. And for a city that's viewed as one of the most desirable places in the country, that's just not a good thing. And we need to do something about it, and that's what we're here to tell you today. That 15% of the third graders at Asheville City Schools show proficiency versus 75% of the white kids. And if that doesn't jerk you in the heart, I don't know what would. And then the same thing, a different number, but the same issue with math. 13% of black kids proficient in math, and 80% of white kids. Now, that correlation that 75% of all the people, black people in penitentiary in the United States are high school dropouts. So this is the feeder source. If we don't do something about the kids, and then they're going to end up being in penitentiary. Now, if you have invested in privatizing penitentiary, that may be okay, but for the rest of us, it's just horrible that we're losing that many people. Now, the good side, as I mentioned earlier, Peak, 72% of our kids last year tested were proficient in math. And 44% were proficient in reading. And that deserves a hand, I think. Doesn't it? Thank you.
They got you.
I mean, that's significant. So the test scores are just an indicator, but if we don't have an indicator, we can't progress with the educating of our kids. And we've proven that if you focus on kids and focus not only on the academic part, but on the social part, the emotional part, and then progress is being made significantly. And our school director here is the master of that. Ms. Gadada Wynn has proven that we have to educate the kids in the classroom, but we also have to give them the social needs outside the classroom. And that's obviously where the public school system has failed. And again, I was on the school board for 8 years, and we fought this. We went to New York, we brought the KIPP program here, and we were making progress with that. But the one thing that happens with low-income black people is that we can forget about them in a minute. And that's what happened when we had KIPP. The only time in the last 30 years that we've had single digits in the achievement gap is when we had KIPP. And if you look at our 140 kids, if you take that number and insert that into the public schools, it would have a significant impact on the achievement gap if all of us were in the same school. So the bottom line for us is that we're asking for you all to help us because we only get half of the funding that the city school system gets in Buncombe County, only half. Now, I'm part of the mistake, and David's here. Where are you? Yes, sir. You raise your hand. David's one of the founders, and we thought we were being really, really purposeful when we said we want to feed the kids, we want to give them transportation, and feed them twice a day. We want to give them transportation. What we didn't realize was that cost is significant. And it's prohibiting us from doing other things. But as you well know, you can't put kids in an environment and not give them the services that they need for them to be proficient in the academic part. I'll give you a quick story. When my grandson was in the 6th grade, and my daughter was living, she called in a rage, and she got that honest, and said, that my grandson told her Jeffrey, his best friend, didn't get dessert. And she said, why? She said, well, he had a red card, and the kids with red cards didn't get dessert. Where our system has layers of who gets what when they get to school. And that's what we negated. We didn't want to do that. So we feed everybody the same meal so that all the kids feel like that they're part of something that's really important, and that is equity. And there's nothing more embarrassing for you to be identified as being different than if you're 5, 6, or 7 years old. And if those of you think back to that time, you can remember. So our economic driver is 93% of our kids, of our scholars, are economically disadvantaged. Say that again, 92%. And approximately 74% reside in subsidized housing. So that's a population that we're all out trying to do something about. And we want you to be a part of correcting an atrocity, a neglect of a population in a city that has more than 80% of the cities in the United States. You know, we're bragging about people moving here, and we're bragging about the price of housing. Just sold one for $7 million, and we can't feed kids. You got to think about that. And just because you can't see them doesn't mean that they don't exist. And that's the problem with us as a society. And I'm not just being accusatory to anybody here, but in order to be inclusive, you have to think beyond just the kids. You got to think about you and what would happen if you were one of those kids. And I thought yesterday, what would be better than for us to think about the homeless that we experience and a black 7-year-old black kid that we can't educate because we don't see them and we don't give a damn if they're educated or not. And we just got to stop that. And I'm just begging you today, and I know this is emotional for me, but we can't let a whole segment of the population not get educated. And we're going to make that happen, but we got to have your help. And that's why we're asking for some of the funding that you all have, to, and I'd like for you to help us with that. And the other thing that we will guarantee you, and Kadada's here, if you want to come out to the school and tour the school, if you want to see the books, if you want to see the budget, whatever you want to see, we want to be available to let you do that. But you've got to come out and look at it and see the difference. The numbers clearly indicate that we have made significant strides in our method to teach kids that are underprivileged. So that's my ask. That's also my beg and my plea.
Thank you.
That you gotta help us.
Thank you. You got a lot, turn around.
Can I say something really quick since I missed the check-in and we were talking about ARPA funds? I just want to go ahead and say that I would be in favor of utilizing ARPA funds to help fund Pete.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Jonathan Wainscott.
Thanks, I'll be brief, obviously, with the 2 minutes. I just wanted to tell you about last Monday. I had the honor of meeting Floyd McKissick Jr., our former senator, in person over at the Kenilworth Presbyterian Church, celebrating MLK Day, and he gave this wonderful presentation about the work that he and his father did together in creating Soul City, North Carolina, and its ultimate demise by Jesse Helms. But I was able to go up to him after the presentation, introduced myself, and I said, I just want to thank you, Mr. McKissick. I was actually familiar with your name before your father's because of the work that you did on Senate Bill 813 back in 2018. And he said, what was that again? He couldn't quite remember. And I said, that was the bill that abolished our at-large election system here in Asheville and gave us district elections. And he said, oh yeah, that's, thank you. And I said, you know what our city council then did the year later? And he said, no what? I said, they reversed your work. They changed the charter and reversed your work. And so this is, again, you know, I think one of Asheville's greatest shames, the work that Floyd McKissick Sr. did in his life was just legendary, and it's something that the city should honor a little bit more. And then his son goes on to be, you know, a civil rights leader again, second generation. And I'm just begging you to reconsider and have a conversation about, you know, eliminating our at-large election system because it's a Jim Crow policy that we still use today. And I invite you to be on the right side of history with me. So have a nice night. Thank you very much for all you do.
Nina Tovish.
Good evening again. I didn't have an opportunity to comment on the presentation that was made by the Realignment Working Group earlier. It was my privilege to participate in that group, and it's an ongoing undertaking. And I just wanted to reiterate what I consider it, how I consider it to be a terrific example of citizen and staff cooperation to address an issue that affects the functioning of government and service to the community. We started out as an online, mid-COVID, ragtag group of kind of aggravated people, to be honest. It was about, we had a Zoom meeting with like, I don't know, it was like 60 people at least. And there was a lot of pushback and a lot of unhappiness and a lot of, you know, what are we gonna do? And it was pretty contentious. That was almost 2 years ago now. Over time, people kept coming back. The numbers self-selectedly people started falling away because it takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness to follow up on something this complicated and this important, and something that needs to be done in a way that is truly constructive. By fall of that year, we had, I think, a group around 20, and there's been some additional attrition, and now it's a group of maybe 10 or 12 people who have stuck with it. I hope you all will honor the work of the folks who have committed so much time, so much expertise, so much community commitment to this effort. I underscore the ask that the current report, the survey report, be put on the city's website.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That request was made during the presentation, and Ben, I'm looking at you because they mentioned your name. I assume that the report that was presented tonight will be put on the project page for that. Okay, I just assumed that would happen, but good, all right. The next person signed up to speak is Monica Buckley.
Hi, forgive me as I try to cut little parts out to fit my 2 minutes. So just thank you, City Council and APD and the support staff for your valuable time and patience as Hitler via al-Husseini, via Yasser Arafat, via the PLO, via the PA, via Hamas comes to your meeting to ask you to complete the legacy that never made it past Cairo. Praise God. I was happy to hear from actual Palestinian Americans last time, people who have actual skin in this war. And maybe some more Zionist Jews will show up one day, but they're afraid because this entire situation reeks of 1939 Nazi Germany, complete with boycotts and blood libel. I encourage them not to show up. They are right to hide from the raging anti-Semitism here. As to the Palestinian Americans here, I feel for them. Unfortunately, I would not ask Israel to stop looking for their hostages and protecting their citizens from the attempted genocide, the Palestinians, as well as their cohorts, because people are sad about the consequences of starting war against a country that far surpasses Palestinian military capacity. Instead, Palestine is asking ordinary Americans to do their dirty work for them, and I hear them calling globalize the Intifada here on our streets. This is a call to kill all Jews anywhere on the planet. Do you understand that? Now we have Marxists, socialists, and communists calling for hands off the Houthis. Let me help you understand the Houthis' raison d'etre. The flag that they wave says in clear language, Allah is great. Death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, and victory to Islam. When people tell you who they are and what they are, please believe them. I want to address the woman here 2 weeks ago who said that Israel is the only country in the world that cries anti-Semitism when you criticize its government. Are the 85% of Israelis that don't support Netanyahu also anti-Semitic?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That wasn't your timer, right? That was your, okay. Naomi Friedman. Okay, yeah. Naomi, Ms. Friedman, if you just pull that, yeah, there you go, okay.
On October 7th at 6:30 a.m., I woke to the sound of powerful explosions from Hamas missiles in the Iron Dome. By 8:30 a.m., I started receiving photos and videos on WhatsApp of people massacred in the streets of the major city of Sderot, which was about 2 hours from me. Hamas terrorists had taken over the police headquarters. News reporters didn't know what was going on and the government was silent. Meanwhile, 3,000 Hamas terrorists streamed across the border, raping and mutilating children and burning families alive, throwing Jews into mass graves and committing the most horrific atrocities of the 21st century. Hamas and the Gazan civilians who were promised an apartment and $10,000 per hostage murdered 1,200 people and kidnapped 253. You probably know all of this. What you don't know is that the same missiles sent to kill me misfired and murdered Gazan civilians. 1 out of 5 Hamas missiles misfires into Gaza. When the Gazans tried to escape south, Hamas shot them to keep them as human shields. In Gaza, almost every hospital, mosque, and dwelling houses Hamas weapons. And UNRWA, the United Nations agency in charge of the welfare of the Palestinians, has utterly forsaken them, allowing Hamas to build weapons factories besides kindergartens and to use schools to indoctrinate children into violent, holy war. Hamas is holding 2 kinds of captives, of hostages. 136 hostages from Israel and over 1 million hostages from Gaza. Here in Asheville, anti-Israel activists promote Hamas's agenda by calling for a ceasefire that would leave the terrorist state intact. These same activists are spreading anti-Semitic narratives that blame the Jews and only the Jews for the violence. These activists are making Asheville less safe for Jews, for Zionists, and for me. And to me, I feel as if I'm living in 1939 Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lily Axon, and then after that, Heather Aubrey.
Hello. This is the first time I've ever felt compelled to come speak before City Council. And what I have to say is that killing children is not political. It's immoral. If every single student at Asheville High School was killed in a bombing today, the school would need to be rebuilt, repopulated, and bombed again 9 more successive times to equal the children killed in Gaza. I implore to each of you, why? Why do we exist on this earth? Is it to become beaten down and to look away the second things become complicated? To come up with excuses every time suffering flickers before our eyes? Is it to become continually hardened before the world, only to find ourselves arriving at death, never having had risked anything at all? Or is it to set ourselves free, to rise at the side of injustice and to feel our hearts pulse into life again as we reach and hold the hands of our siblings in this world? I feel that it is my responsibility to bring myself before you and to inquire you, to feel the beat of life within us all, connecting us all, and to stand with us in saying, babies, children, toddlers, mothers, doctors, artists, gymnasts, poets, grandmothers, uncles, fathers, aunts, grandfathers, cats, dogs, olive trees, or any other living beings will not be killed with our consent or with our tax money. Do the right thing and call for a ceasefire. Hamas has even agreed to release all of the hostages if there is a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. So if you really want people to come home, stop terrorizing other countries. We should stop terrorizing other countries with our tax dollars. Stop killing many children, which I have here, if you will let me hand them out. The stories of some of these children who have been murdered and their entire families. But anyways, I know this is super intense and you sit here all day listening to so many problems, and this is something that I do not feel would be difficult. And many cities around our country are passing these resolutions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Aubrey and then Thomas Groke.
Good evening. I am here to demand that this council approve a ceasefire resolution in Gaza. I ask this because the genocide in Palestine is an Asheville issue. This genocide is an American issue. You may think this is not our place to be involved in something so far away, but my response is this issue feels so close to home it is unbearable. The amount of Palestinian children that have been killed as of last Friday is equivalent to more than double the amount of children enrolled in Asheville City schools. On top of this, over 10,000 Americans have been sent to fight in the Israeli army to participate in this violence against the Palestinian people since October 7th of last year. 10,000 American people fighting to commit genocide. This includes people who have never been citizens of Israel, nor have their families ever been citizens of Israel, can choose to go and fight in the Israeli army as if this is a local police force that they can just pick up and join at any time. Speaking of police, the Israeli Defense Forces actively trades weaponry, tactics, and ways to suppress protest and dissent with American police officers. American police officers are occasionally sent to Israel for training, and IDF soldiers sent in turn to the U.S. to train police here. These trainings also involve sales of crowd control weapons exchanged between the two governments, including U.S.-made tear gas canisters that were heavily used in protests in Oakland, California in 2011, Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, and nationwide in 2020, as well as Israeli surveillance technologies that have been used globally by fascist governments to spy on journalists and other dissenters. In 2020, it was the Palestinian people being some of the first to share tips on how to best deal with tear gassing, pepper spray, and stun gun grenades officers were using against protesters because they have been experiencing this violence from IDF soldiers for decades. I am sick of hearing that this began on October 7th. I am sick of hearing it is anti-Semitic to support Palestine, and not how deeply Islamophobic, colonialist, and genocidal it is to support this Israeli death campaign. I am sick of the genocide, and I am sick of waking up every day to more news of people dying. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Groke and then Oliver Pippin. Thomas, and I apologize if I said your last name wrong.
It's Groning. Thank you. I gave you guys a packet here. I'll make it quick. Thank you, council members, City of Asheville. I'm Thomas Groning, and today I bring before you a proposal that not only addresses critical need, but celebrates our rich local culture here in Asheville. I propose the establishment of the Asheville Community Free Grocery Store, a unique initiative tailored to support struggling families and low-income community members. It's kind of a unique idea, I guess. There's a need for the store. In Asheville, many of our neighbors face daily challenges in accessing basic necessities, food insecurity, especially among low-income families. It's not just a statistic, it's really it's a reality that affects the well-being and future of our community. The store is a beacon of hope for these families, offering not only sustenance, but also dignity. And it's beyond a grocery store, it's a cultural hub. Our vision extends beyond just providing free groceries to people that need it. We see it as a store, as a cultural hub featuring a music venue to celebrate local artists, local music that will resonate with the diverse musical heritage of Asheville, providing a platform for local talent and enriching our community's cultural fabric. With a budget of $250,000, our plan includes acquiring, refurbishing a suitable older property, breaking it back up, stocking essential groceries, and setting up the music venue. Closes the budget. It ensures a sustainable model that combines community support with cultural enrichment. This project is more than a store, it's a community lifeline. It's about feeding families, nurturing local arts, and strengthening our community bonds. Our commitment is to ensure its sustainability through local partnerships, volunteer engagement, and ongoing fundraising. And in closing, I request the council's support for this transformative project. Together we can create a space that not only feeds bodies, but also nourishes the souls. Thank you.
Thank you. Oliver Pippin and then Cassandra Dayton.
Hello, my name is Oliver, and I'm here to talk about the genocide in Palestine. So for 108 days, we have watched the loss of life, culture, and hope in Palestine. Now, living in a small town in North Carolina, it's easy to feel removed from global problems, but I demand that we keep this conversation of freedom in Palestine alive. In the same way that I and others here are here tonight to speak to you, our city council members, you are also able to speak to your superiors about Palestine and hold them accountable. You are all in a unique position of power that gives you a louder voice than the average person, so use it with good intention. For months, you all have witnessed protests in Asheville and around the world, demonstrating a ceasefire or demanding a ceasefire in Palestine. These protests will continue until the people are heard and Palestine is liberated. And I recognize that our small local government cannot make the final call for the entire United States demanding a ceasefire, but we can keep the conversation alive and pass demands up the political chain of power. Again, you are able to use your platform and power for problems that are larger than the local bubble of Asheville. So please use it and demand a ceasefire for Palestine. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Cassandra Dayton and then Carrie Celeste.
Hey, good evening. I'm Cassandra Dayton, and I'm a resident of Buncombe County. In Asheville and within many southern cities, we truly value our sense of community. We lean toward local spending, supporting local business, small businesses, strengthening ourselves from within. The most profitable advertisement of this city is its local mountain-nestled charm. But where is the Blue Ridge charm in a local government's passivity when it's time to minutely weigh in on an ethnic cleansing? No acknowledgement, no discussion, just silence. When the Asheville housing and addiction crises, as we know, are abysmal and only worsening, where does the unspent energy here go? Aren't we paying taxes? I have a loss for words when I watch the complicity in my own town. We may not have bombs raining down upon us or guns pointed in our face, but us in this room tonight are responsible for what happens in the world, no matter how uncomfortable it makes us. You council members are my direct communicative contact. You are who the people turn to here when things are not right. You're not being paid a salary to ignore your constituents. Please do something. I once again call on you to pass a resolution that urges your superiors, the members of Congress, to demand an immediate ceasefire, to release all hostages, to allow unrestricted entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza, to restore critical supplies and infrastructure in Gaza, and to have a morsel of respect for international law. There is no turning a blind eye when you voluntarily choose a job of public representation and responsibility. We are our actions, no matter our intentions behind them. We are simply what we do and what we do every single day. And I know you guys are here very long hours and you listen to people say the same things over and over again, but please do something. Thanks.
Thank you. Carrie Celeste and then Thomas Saxton.
My name is Carrie Celeste. I want to share the words of Rachel Corrie, an American human rights activist from Olympia, Washington. In 2003, Rachel traveled to Rafah, a city in the Gaza Strip, to work as a human rights observer. During her time in Gaza, Rachel wrote several letters home. I'm going to read an excerpt from a letter she wrote to her mom. February 27th, 2003. I have bad nightmares about tanks and bulldozers outside our house and you and me inside. I am really scared for the people here. Yesterday, I watched a father lead his 2 tiny children holding his hands out into the sight of tanks and a sniper tower because he thought his house was going to be exploded. I know that from the United States, it all sounds like hyperbole. I really can't believe that something like this can happen in the world without a bigger outcry about it. Anyway, I'm rambling. Just want to write to my mom and tell her that I'm witnessing this chronic, insidious genocide, and I'm really scared and questioning my fundamental belief in the goodness of human nature. This has to stop. I think it is a good idea for all of us to drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop. I don't think it's an extremist thing to do anymore. I still really want to dance around to Pat Benatar and have boyfriends and make comics for my coworkers, but I also want this to stop. Disbelief and horror is what I feel. Disappointment. I am disappointed that this is the base of our world and that we, in fact, participate in it. This is not at all what I asked for when I came into the world. This is not at all what the people here asked for when they came into the world. More big explosions somewhere in the distance outside. When I come back from Palestine, I probably will have nightmares and constantly feel guilty for not being here, but I can channel that into more work. Coming here is one of the better things I've ever done. So when I sound crazy or if the Israeli military should break with their racist tendency not to, Rachel Corrie was killed by the Israeli military 17 days after writing this letter. She was crushed to death.
Ms. Celeste, thank you very much. I'm sorry, thank you. Thomas Saxton and then Aiden Daly.
My name is Thomas Saxton. I'm going to jump right into this. This requires some audience participation. Don't worry, it's just raising hands. It's a bit of a game that I think would have confused the cowardly Zionists that left this meeting. I'm going to read a quote, and I would really appreciate if the City Council would participate in this. You are going to decide if you think it is a quote by a Nazi or a Zionist. The group is responsible for the war. The treatment they receive from us is hardly unjust. They have deserved it all. Raise your hand if you think that is a Zionist quote. I see we have no participation from the City Council. Raise your hand if you think that is a Nazi quote. That is a quote from Joseph Goebbels, a Nazi minister of propaganda against Jewish people. Next quote. They will get no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We are fighting against human animals and will act accordingly. Raise your hand if you think it's a Zionist quote. Nazi quote. That was said by Yoav Gallant, Israel's Minister of Defense. Final quote. Finish them off and don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, their mothers and children. These animals can no longer live. If you have a neighbor, don't wait. Go to his home and shoot him. Zionist quote. Nazi quote. That was said by Irza Yashin, who was brought in on official IDF vehicles to give a pep talk to Israeli soldiers before Israel's 2023 ground invasion of Gaza. This is not a fight against terrorism. This is a deliberate genocide and ethnic cleansing. Free Palestine, and I'm here in support of the resolution for ceasefire in Gaza.
Thank you. Aiden Daly and then Eleanor Mildenstein.
My name is Aiden Daly, and I'm here to urge council to join dozens of city councils throughout the country passing a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. I'm going to finish reading what Carrie was saying earlier. 17 days after writing this letter on March 16th, 2003, Rachel was crushed to death by an Israeli bulldozer as she stood in front of of a Gazan family home to prevent it from being demolished. She was 23 years old. I'm 23 years old. This genocide did not start on October 7th. Rachel's story takes place over 21 years ago. But since October 7th alone, over 25,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed by the Israeli occupation. Over 10,000 of these were children. Each of these lives was a universe. Pretending this is not happening is not an option, not a human one. This choice should be easy. This action is urgent. Okay, that was the end of Carrie's. We are seeing a dark and inhumane history repeat itself through the genocide of Palestinian people in Gaza that the United States continues to fund. This did not start on October 7th, but since October 7th, okay, I said that. I hope you have heard the horrors that are being illustrated by your constituents. With that, I have one question. What do you and the city of Asheville have to lose by passing this resolution? Whatever you are thinking right now, whatever it is that you and the city of Asheville have to lose, is it worth the countless lives, including thousands of children, that are being threatened every day and have been threatened for 70 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Eleanor Mildenstein and then Bonnie Allen.
Hello, my name is Eleanor Mildenstein. I'm also here to urge the council to join city councils throughout the country, including San Francisco, Minneapolis, Atlanta, and Carborough, North Carolina, in passing a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. So tonight, I would like to use my time to share the voices of queer Palestinians, who are often used as a prop for Zionist talking points. The Israeli government would like you to believe that Israel, a country where marriage equality is still not recognized, is a beacon of support for queer people in the Middle East. The truth is that the bombs dropped by the IDF on Palestinian homes, schools, and hospitals do not discriminate. So I would like to share a tweet from Baba Subo on Twitter, a queer Palestinian man. What do any of you know of my Palestine? Of the late-night queer parties in Ramallah, of raves held in biblically aged buildings, of lesbians in hijabs, of gay men in hoop earrings, of trans Palestinians dancing with joyful abandon. We fear Israel first, before our families, always. We're 100 times more likely to die at the hands of an Israeli gun or bomb than by Western propagandized ideas of honor killings. I've seen white Christian Americans wish their child rather be dead than gay. Israel is the one that weaponizes the homophobia that queer people all over the world of all religions experience to justify murdering Palestinians of all kinds, young and old, Christian and Muslim, queer and straight. Asheville consistently prides itself on its progressive values and vibrant queer community, but actions speak louder than words. Queer liberation could not exist without the liberation of Palestinian queers. And we need our local governing bodies to take a stand if we have any chance of creating a change on a federal level. It is easy to feel small and powerless, but that is what our oppressors want us to believe. You may be just one person and we may be just one city, but our words and actions matter.
Thank you. Bonnie Allen and then Yasmin Dajani.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I'm a resident of Asheville. In a democracy, the views of the people are supposed to reflect the policies put in place in the government. 66% of people in the United States support a ceasefire resolution in Gaza, but our government continues to send billions of dollars to Israel. I think it's incredibly important to recognize that this isn't just a problem in Palestine. The billions of dollars being sent to Israel fund this genocide could be used for our education, for our health care, for our infrastructure, and many more things. There is a growing list of cities across the country who are adopting a ceasefire resolution, and Asheville should take a step and stance and join them. Excuse me. If you have a heart, you will not ignore this genocide. If you care about innocent human lives, you will use your power to adopt a ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Yasmin Dajani and Neil Schaefer.
Hello. My name is Yasmin. Israel is guilty of using internationally banned weapons such as white phosphorus, dense inert metal explosives, and armor-piercing bombs on the Palestinian people. White phosphorus burns through layers of skin to expose the bone. Its mere inhalation is enough to cause severe internal organ damage. Dense inert metal explosives release inert metal atoms into the skin that are difficult to remove from a patient's body. Armor-piercing bombs are used on Palestinian homes. Israel is guilty of dropping more than 25,000 tons of bombs on Gaza. Guilty of relentlessly bombing hospitals, schools, churches, refugee camps, and designated so-called safe zones. Israel is guilty of killing 119 journalists, guilty of murdering more than 300 healthcare workers. Israel is guilty of annihilating more than 30,000 Palestinians. Israel is guilty of wounding 62,681 Palestinian civilians. Israel is guilty of cutting off food, water, electricity, and fuel to the entire Gaza population. Guilty. A ceasefire is the very least we demand.
Neil Schaefer, and then RJ Chiquito.
I am here to demand that you pass a permanent and immediate ceasefire resolution in Gaza and join cities across the world in condemning Israel's genocide. Over 30,000 Palestinian human beings have been murdered. The martyred Palestinians are not numbers. They are each a human life. As a Jew, the senseless hatred and violence towards Palestine from Israel, funded by my own tax dollars in this city, sickens me. It is a Holocaust and a genocide. Your voters are demanding that you take action. They are watching as you continue to send money to fund a genocide as your own people are dying homeless and hungry. Your voters are watching you and your inaction. The United States is supporting and funding the war crimes of Israel. This has nothing to do with Judaism. This is a colonial occupier murdering innocent people. Every accusation from Zionists is a confession of their own actions. If you continue to condone Israel's actions and ignore their crimes, thousands more will die. Men, women, and children are suffering and being murdered with bombs, gas, starvation in hospitals, homes, nurseries, bakeries, mosques, and churches. The suffering people of Palestine need the United States to fight for them and fight against another Holocaust. Allyship and support of a country that has killed thousands of innocents is nothing less than genocide. Your complacency and silence is killing people. As a Jew and human, I demand that you pass a resolution for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and for immediate aid to be sent into Palestine. This is not a conflict, this is murder. The United States and presidency is condoning mass slaughter, and history will not forget it. We need to act now to stop it. Palestine needs our support. I am ashamed and horrified at your lack of action. Pass a ceasefire resolution and free Palestine.
RJ Chiquito, and then Gabriel Massar McMillan. Do you want me to change it up? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Then Gabriel Massar McMillan.
We're calling upon y'all to create a ceasefire resolution, not because Asheville is the deciding factor on whether or not this genocide will end, but because of the simple fact that we all every day co-create this reality. Whether you are a federal employee, a service industry worker, a member of city council, or the president, every day we wake up and we play our role. We interact with one another and we reaffirm this reality and these systems that govern our lives. Is my time still? When it is our government that is supplying the weapons that Israel is using to indiscriminately bomb the entire population of Gaza with blatant, publicly stated intent towards collective punishment, when right here in Asheville, the County Commission just passed a zoning ordinance letting Pratt & Whitney expand their operation, manufacturing the engines and the aircraft that are dropping said bombs. When that is the context, it is each and every one of our individual responsibilities to say no to a world where this is the norm. And to those individual stances add up to the sum of all of humanity. If you look at these photos I have here, and you're unsure of whether or not this is wrong, then I don't know what to say to you because you've lost touch with your basic humanity. But if you see these images and you know that this is categorically wrong, then say so out loud. Use your platform, however small it may be. It adds up. If every single local government in the US developed a ceasefire resolution, how would that look? What kind of pressure would that put on our federal government? And if that had happened a month ago, how many more thousands of children would be alive today?
The next person signed up to speak is Maya King and then Noor Abdel Fattah.
Hello. I don't really know what to say or how to say it, besides just to say if I could beg and plead you into voting for a ceasefire, I would. I don't know how to though, and I guess I just ask that you recognize that you have the capacity to make change and use your power that you have worked for and tried to get into this council for to do something right for the people, the humans that are being killed and the children and the babies that are being killed. Because it's a human rights. I don't even know how to say this really. It's just, I just beg of you to do something with your power and to look at what is happening and recognize how wrong it is and that you have the power to make genuine change more than any of us do as we go to rallies and we come here and we fight and do things, repost and call our representatives and do things to make change. You have the power to make real change. And if you can help a ceasefire in Gaza, you should. I guess that's all I really have to say. But please, 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 please use your power to change the world for the better and take away the suffering. Please.
Thank you. After Noor Abdel Fattah is Forrest Ford.
I'm starting off with a quote by James Baldwin from 1979. And just to make it clear, 1979 did happen before October 7th, 2023, just if anyone is confused about the timing there. Quote, "But the state of Israel was not created for the salvation of the Jews. It was created for the salvation of Western interests, and that is what is becoming clear. I must say this was always clear to me. The Palestinians have been paying for the British colonial policy of divide and rule, and for Europe's guilty Christian conscience for more than 30 years." End quote. I had a speech prepared with more statistics and real-life stories from Gaza, but since my time is limited today, I'll boil it down to this. I stood before you here last time and told you about the Noors whose dead bodies lie in Gaza, but obviously you do not care. Maybe let us listen to the country that has successfully beat apartheid, South Africa, when they claim genocide, and details the genocide in the international court. The end of the Zionist regime will be the start of Jews and Muslims and pink flamingos for all I care, living peacefully under one state on Palestinian land. What I'm going to ask you to do here right now and today, council members, if you condemn the death of over 26,000 Palestinian bodies who look like me and speak my language, and if you understand that their death and destruction cannot morally be written off as self-defense, please physically stand up now. Nobody. If you condemn this council member, please rise. Shame on you.
So just before we continue on, if you could remain in your seats during the comment and not approach the council, that would be helpful, thank you. And I know that there's a lot of interest in getting council to do things during the comment, but this is a statutorily required public comment period, and we are to sit and listen to you. That is all we're supposed to do. So I know that's very unsatisfying, and I apologize. And some council members may be available after, although we have a closed session after, to talk more with you. But that is, so just an explanation of why we are just sitting and listening to you. So Forrest Ford is the next person to speak, and then Ilya Andre.
Good evening, council members. As I stand before you, people are being murdered. While we sit comfortably within this chamber, people are fleeing for their lives, trying to find their daughters and sons, mothers and fathers, grandparents, their friends, hoping that they won't find them among the dead. Tens of thousands have been killed. Thousands more are missing, presumably buried under the rubble. Over 1 million are internally displaced. Basic necessities like food, clean drinking water, electricity, cooking fuel, and essential medicines are dangerously scarce. Hospitals have been bombed. The crisis cannot be overstated. The life of every single person in Gaza is under threat. I've found it hard to sleep much in the last 3 months. When I try to do so, I can't help but imagine trying to fall asleep as I listen to the sound of bombs dropping close enough to shake the bed that I sleep in. To try and sleep knowing my entire family and I could be crushed as our own home collapses on us. Imagine how it would feel to wake up choking on stone dust, hearing the screams of my loved ones around me, trapped under the rubble, unable to protect them, unable to even hold them in our last moments. These are not the thoughts that I wish to have before bed every night. But I cannot in good conscience ignore or tune them out. I do not want to become desensitized to the violence we are witnessing. There are people who need my help. There are people who need your help, each and every one of you. So I'm here today asking that you do more than bear witness to this horror. We must fulfill our responsibility as human beings. We must take direct action and stand with our Palestinian siblings. We are not helpless to watch. We do have the power to stop this violence.
Thank you. Ilya Andre, and then Zaya Lopez-Bird.
Hello, City Council. Around 2 months ago, my aunt gave birth to a premature baby. His name is Phineas. He's doing well now. But when I first saw photos of Phineas, my new cousin, all I could think of was how simultaneously I was losing over 120 other cousins as their electricity was cut off by Israel and the state of Israel, effectively killing them in their incubators. 25,000 souls have been lost in the last 3 months. 25,000 voices have been cut off. 25,000 people are dead. And the only thing that separates us from their graves is a body of water. I demand a resolution for an immediate ceasefire.
Thank you. Zaya Lopez-Bird, and then Chloe Walters.
Good evening. I'm Zaya, and I am a college student at Warren Wilson, so I'm also working. I'm queer. I'm here, and I broke my arm, and I'm human, and my heart aches every day for all these Palestinian children, all the Palestinian people, and everyone that shows all the genocides happening. There are multiple genocides happening. And I stand here before you to ask for a ceasefire. And I want you all to look within yourselves and around your community and like your city that you're helping to build and better, and like ask your higher ups for more money to fund us and like not Israel, and I don't know, make our city even beautifuler and so wonderful. And I hope to come and live here after college at some point for a while, but I wholeheartedly need you all to stand with me as well if I'm gonna be a member of this city. If not, I'll go back to DC and then keep talking to them or whatever. All right, thank you, and please call for a ceasefire.
Chloe Walters and then David Robinson Sr.
As many of the people before me have mentioned, over 20,000 Palestinians have been murdered by the State of Israel since October 7th. Millions have been displaced and left without the resources necessary to sustain human life. It is important to remember that these numbers are not just numbers. These are people's children, friends, partners, neighbors, parents, bakers, doctors. These ongoing massacres have murdered entire generations of families. Medical professionals in Gaza have had to create a new term for many of the victims that they treat. This acronym, WCNSF, means Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. These children are growing up with no family, oftentimes life-altering injuries, such as amputated limbs, and I can only pray that they get a chance to grow up at all. There is nothing that could justify the atrocities that are still occurring. I see you, although some of you have not looked me in the eyes yet. Now you have, thank you. I know that you are humans like me, like my siblings in Palestine, and I ask you to engage with your humanity, please. There is no amount of money or power that could ever be more important than the tens of thousands of people and counting that we have lost. Please stand with humanity and call for an immediate ceasefire.
Thank you. David Robinson and then Lawson Alderson.
Good evening. I think Gene Bell did an awesome job giving you an overview of Peak as far as, and also the Eddington Center pods. But what I want to do is give you a history of how it all developed. In the year 2020, we were all in a survival mode. Paranoia was everywhere. Gene Freeman, at that time, was superintendent. He called Kadada, Shonda Jackson, Gene Bell, Quentin Miller, Mike Woods, Tillman Jackson, and myself. And we sat in his office to try to figure out how we can navigate 300 students that didn't have access to Wi-Fi or internet. And they were pretty much left behind. We were beginning to start the school year. We were able to put it in we got a grant to put in the internet system in Hillcrest, Pittsburgh View, and several other apartment complexes. We were able to navigate 300 plus students through that particular school year. And we had data on those students. They had over 4,400 hours of suspension, expulsions, tardiness, and all kind of things. We had less than 20 hours with those same students. We had students that had been promoted just based on we were in the pandemic. They didn't pass the grade. They just pushed them from the 5th grade to the 6th grade. We had students that were in that situation that became A, B honor roll students. They were left behind. They were actually left back in their previous grade, went to the next grade, and became an A, B honor roll student. Okay. We knew then that we had to nurture, and spend time with these kids because they were missing something. Because when we started the after-school program.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Lawson Alderson.
Hi, I'm Lawson. I'm here to discuss the resolution for ceasefire in Gaza. 108 days of genocide, 108 days of American and now Asheville-sponsored slaughter. Is this the legacy that you wish to leave for yourselves, for your children, for our community, or for Asheville? This is a crisis of unimaginable scale. The Israeli government's bombardment and brutal siege of Palestinians in Gaza have killed over 25,000 Palestinians, including over 10,000 children, all with your support as you continue to ignore the pleadings of the people that you work for. Your constituency has overwhelmingly supported a resolution for ceasefire in Gaza, and it's time to adopt the only just and moral position. It's time to adopt the will of the people into a formal resolution. There is no sitting idly by or continuing with normalcy while the children of Palestine are being murdered senselessly. In fact, you have done more in providing the land and thus resources and artillery to carry out the genocide in Gaza than you have in acknowledging its existence. It is the negligence of governing bodies such as yourselves that erode the trust in our democratic institutions and calcify these horrors into the responsibility of everyone that you claim to serve. This is not an issue of politics or religion. This is not an issue that can be ignored because of our proximity. It is an issue of humanity, and as civil servants, it is your duty to make even the smallest gesture towards the will of Asheville's people and the global community. The only way forward is addressing this violence, addressing Israeli military occupation and apartheid, and ending U.S. complicity in Palestinian oppression. It is time to do your job and enact the will of Asheville. Ceasefire now.
Thank you. That concludes our public hearing agenda. We do have a closed session, as I mentioned. Maggie, do you have the motion? Yes.
You ready? I move that the Asheville City Council go into closed session for the following reasons. 1, to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statute. The statutory authorization is contained in NC General Statute 143-318.11A1. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential is North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11E. Reason number 2, to consult with an attorney employed by the city about matters with respect to which the attorney-client privilege between the city and attorney must be preserved, including but not limited to providing the city attorney with instructions concerning the handling or settlement of a claim or judicial action. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will adjourn from the closed session.
Maggie's asking, everyone was an aye? Shanika.